Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. Today, we're tackling a really complex and incredibly vital question, one that's shaped the Middle East for, well, over a century now. For over a century, Palestinians have fought for statehood. But as the Gaza war rages on, global recognition seems to be growing, yet true independence, that still feels just out of reach. So the big question is, why is Palestinian statehood so elusive? In this discussion, we're going to look at that long, challenging historical pursuit. We'll explore the recent shifts in international diplomacy, try to understand the UN's pretty intricate role, and really dig into the significant hurdles that persist. Our goal is to offer you a comprehensive picture of the forces at play, using key insights into the current situation.
And it's absolutely essential, I think, to grasp all those forces. It's not just history, not just politics. It's also the urgent humanitarian concerns. They all weave together, making this issue so incredibly contentious and, frankly, pivotal for understanding the broader international order. It's a really multifaceted problem. Needs a nuanced look.
Definitely. So let's start maybe by acknowledging just how long this quest has been going on. Palestinians have pursued statehood for more than a century. This aspiration, it's deeply rooted in history, right? Back to the end of Ottoman rule, the Mandate era.
Exactly. It's not new at all. And the current reality really reflects that deep history. The Palestinian territories, they've basically been in a kind of political limbo for decades. Ever since Israel's independence in 1948, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank have been right at the center of recurring conflict, driven by these fierce, competing claims over land, borders, and ultimately sovereignty, Palestinian sovereignty.
And this long struggle, it's been dramatically, well, amplified by recent events, hasn't it? The immediate catalyst for this renewed international focus on statehood, it's got to be the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. That conflict, starting with Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack, has really propelled this whole discussion back to the forefront. There's a real urgency now.
Yeah, and what's particularly driving that renewed attention, I think, is the sheer scale of the humanitarian crisis that's unfolding. Israel's military campaign, it's destroyed huge swaths of Gaza, and it's severely limited the flow of aid, critically limited it. Humanitarian groups are now openly saying this has pushed the region towards famine. In August, a UN-backed global hunger monitor actually declared an entirely man-made famine in and around Gaza City.
Entirely man-made. That's a powerful statement.
It is, and it suggests, that this was potentially avoidable, and it doesn't stop there. Over 100 groups have accused Israel of weaponizing aid.
Weaponizing aid, that's a very serious accusation.
Extremely serious. It challenges basic humanitarian principles, the laws of war. They're citing reports of hundreds of people dying from hunger or even killed while trying to get food. Now, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reports over 60,000 deaths out of about 2 million people. Israel does challenge that figure, it's important to note. But regardless of the exact number, the dire humanitarian situation itself isn't really in dispute.
And given that dire situation, perhaps it's not surprising we're seeing this shift in the international community's approach to Palestinian statehood. Several countries, even close U.S. allies like Australia, Canada, France, the UK, they've signaled they intend to recognize a Palestinian state, possibly at the UN General Assembly in September. That feels like a pretty significant diplomatic wave.
It does, and if you look at the motivations, the public rhetoric is, well, it's largely driven by these mounting concerns over the dire humanitarian conditions in Gaza. That's the main public reason given. For instance, you had France's foreign minister saying quite explicitly that after 22 months of fruitless attempts, we cannot hope for a lasting ceasefire without sketching out a shared vision for what comes after the war in Gaza.
A vision for afterwards, okay.
Exactly. And Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he framed it as humanity's best hope to break the cycle of violence in the Middle East.
So, high stakes framing there.
Very high stakes. But then if you look behind the scenes, well, Stephen Cook from the Council on Foreign Relations points out that leaders are also facing intense internal pressure from their domestic populations, particularly from groups critical of Israel. So there's a domestic political angle, too.
Ah, right. Domestic pressure.
Yeah, and Elliot Abrams, also from CFR, suggests it's often a domestic political move meant to appeal to the Muslim voting bloc in countries where Muslim populations significantly outnumbered Jewish ones.
So a mix of humanitarian concern and maybe domestic political calculations. Interesting. But what about the conditions attached? France went for unconditional recognition, you said, but the UK, Canada, Australia, they added conditions, right? Demilitarization, promises of elections, keeping Hamas out of government. How much does that dilute the recognition?
That's a really crucial question. Symbolically, Recognition is powerful, even with conditions. But those conditions, they really highlight the deep mistrust, the security concerns that still exist. They're sort of acknowledging the fragmented reality on the ground and trying to shape what a future state might look like, rather than just accepting it. It definitely makes the actual path to implementing statehood much, much more complex.
Okay, let's widen the lens again. Globally, how many countries actually recognize Palestine?
The number is quite high. As of March, it was 147 out of the 193 UN member states, a very substantial majority.
147, wow. But then, who are the main holdouts? Because their stance matters a lot, doesn't it?
It matters hugely. The prominent holdouts are, well, primarily the United States, Israel's biggest ally,
Yep.
but also other big G7 powers like Germany, Italy, and Japan. Their lack of recognition carries significant weight, especially for things like full UN membership.
Right. And the U.S. position, it's been fairly consistent on paper, hasn't it? Most presidents since '93 supported a two-state solution.
Generally, yes, except for Trump. The George W. Bush administration formally adopted it as U.S. policy back in 2002.
But supporting the idea is different from actually recognizing a state unilaterally before a deal with Israel.
Exactly. No U.S. president has committed to that step, recognizing Palestine before a negotiated peace agreement.
And since this current war started, Biden and Trump haven't taken a clear stance on statehood.
Not a definitive one, no. It's interesting, though. A Reuters Ipsos poll from August actually showed nearly 60% of Americans think all UN members should recognize a Palestinian state.
So there's maybe a gap between public opinion and official policy there?
It appears so. And yet you had the Trump administration, for example, openly rebuking recent efforts towards a two-state solution. They called such moves pretty strongly a slap in the face to the victims of October 7 and a reward for terrorism.
Strong language really highlights the division.
It really does. Shows the political tightrope any U.S. administration is on.
Of course, we absolutely have to consider the views of those directly involved. The Israeli government staunchly opposed.
Under the current leadership, yes. Staunchly opposes is the term often used.
And polling reflects that.
It does. July 2025 data showed only about 23% of Jewish Israelis supporting a two-state solution. Compare that to 82% of Arab Israelis. A huge difference.
But it's not just the Israeli side, is it? What about Palestinian views?
That's where it gets even more complex, perhaps. A May 2025 poll, this one by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, found that more than half of Palestinians also oppose the two-state framework.
More than half. So opposition on both sides to the framework everyone talks about.
Precisely. It exposes this critical paradox, doesn't it? If the main parties on the ground don't fully back the two-state solution, then the international focus on it, however well meant, might not achieve much without a fundamental shift in local thinking. It shows just how deep the divisions run.
Okay, so given all that division locally, what about the UN? They've been involved for ages, trying to sort of pave a path.
There have been steps. Back in 1974, a UN resolution recognized the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, as the sole representative of the Palestinian people. They got observer status shortly after that.
And then later the name changed to Palestine within the UN.
Yes, in 1988, after a Palestinian Declaration of Independence, Palestine officially replaced the PLO in the UN system. A really significant milestone came in 2012. That's when the Palestinian territories gained non-member permanent observer status.
Same as the Holy See, right. What does that actually allow them to do?
It lets them participate in UN proceedings, maintain a mission at headquarters. They can join various UN bodies and treaties, like the International Criminal Court, which they have done. But, and this is crucial, it does not give them a vote on Security Council resolutions.
Okay, so participation, but no real voting power where it counts most for membership.
Exactly. And full UN membership itself, that remains out of reach, primarily because of opposition within the Security Council, mainly from the United States.
Which brings us neatly to the biggest hurdle. That actual process for getting full UN membership. It sounds difficult.
It's incredibly difficult, a very high bar. First, an application goes to the Secretary General.
Okay.
Then it's forwarded to the Security Council. It needs yes votes from at least 9 out of the 15 members.
9 out of 15 sounds doable, maybe.
But here's the catch. It must avoid a veto from any of the 5 permanent members.
Yeah.
China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US.
The P5 veto.
Right.
That's the real killer app, isn't it?
It often is. If somehow it gets past the Security Council, then it goes to the General Assembly.
And there.
It needs a 2/3 majority vote. So even if almost every country in the world supports it individually, that Security Council step, specifically the veto, can stop it dead.
So the UN reflects the power politics of its most powerful members, essentially.
That's a fair summary.
Yeah.
And we've seen this process play out and fail recently. Mahmoud Abbas, the PA president, applied back in 2011. That bid just stalled in the Security Council. Didn't even get to a formal vote, as I recall.
And more recently.
In 2024, the Palestinian Authority tried again, renewed the request. This time it did get to a vote, but it failed to advance after the United States vetoed the application.
Vetoed. And the U.S. reasoning.
Their stated reason is that membership should only come through direct negotiations between the PA and Israel, not through what they see as unilateral action at the UN.
So negotiation first, recognition maybe later.
That's the official U.S. position. And it's worth remembering, too, gaining independence on the ground wouldn't automatically mean full UN membership, and getting UN membership wouldn't automatically mean independence on the ground. They're linked, but separate processes.
Okay, so we've looked at the long history, the recent shifts driven by the awful humanitarian crisis, the complex motives of international players, the tough UN process. It all comes back to that big question. Is Palestinian statehood actually achievable, given all this? The two-state solution idea, it's been the cornerstone of peace efforts for so long, like the 1993 Oslo Accords. Though Oslo aimed for self-governance, didn't explicitly mention statehood itself.
Right. And looking at achievability now, the challenges are just immense. One massive obstacle is the fragmented Palestinian leadership. You've got Hamas in Gaza, the PA in parts of the West Bank. There's very little sign of a unified political vision, let alone strategy.
That division must make things incredibly difficult.
Incredibly. And remember Stephen Cook's point. He views these recent recognitions or signals of recognition as mostly virtue signaling. He doubts they'll make a meaningful difference for Palestinians on the ground.
Yeah.
She's essentially asking, what tangible benefit does this bring right now?
A fair question, I suppose.
And he also points out that at this moment, there's very, very little appetite in Israel to have a debate over a two-state solution. The political climate there is just not conducive to it right now.
So lack of Palestinian unity, lack of Israeli appetite.
Exactly. Plus the Security Council veto hurdle we discussed. Even with huge General Assembly support, official UN recognition needs that SC approval. And experts agree, with current U.S. opposition, that's highly unlikely. Cook really emphasizes that ultimately the power lies in the hands of the Israelis. No amount of external recognition, he argues, fundamentally changes the reality of sovereignty on the ground. The change, he says, has to come within Israeli society, but by that time it may be too late. That's a pretty sobering assessment.
It really is. So wrapping this up, what does it all mean for this long-held dream of Palestinian statehood? The path is just clearly overloaded, isn't it? Historical grievances, the current humanitarian catastrophe, incredibly complex international diplomacy, and just deeply entrenched local resistance, really, from multiple sides. It's a pursuit that keeps challenging our very ideas about sovereignty, about peace, in such a volatile part of the world.
And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. In a world where this global recognition seems to be growing, but the local realities remain so incredibly stark, what does truly define a nation's independence? And perhaps more pointedly, what responsibility do international bodies like the UN actually bear when the internal consensus needed for statehood just seems so far away?
That's a powerful question to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this crucial discussion today. If you found this informative, please do like, share, and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network. We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. And please do join us on social media. You'll find all the links provided in the description. Thanks for listening.